Morning all, it's me, Ian here. So I'm heading back to the airport, flying back to Beijing. It is Friday. I have been here in Urumqi in Xinjiang since Monday. Been great, I loved it. I've stayed here in the Conrad Hotel, which is a very nice hotel. And yes, Xinjiang does have top class hotels. I've also roamed the city, ate amazing food, done some shopping, drank coffee, ate cake. I also visited the Uyghur Autonomous Region Museum. I went up into the mountains to see a beautiful part of the country, a glacier lake called Heavenly Lake. And although it was not the best day for the weather, it was still a fantastic experience. And I was surprised to see such a stunning clear lake, although it was frozen. I also went to the People's Park and seen an amazing energy of people dancing, singing and playing musical instruments, and came out that park and I climbed up a hill to take a look at the city. A hill in another park, wanted to look at the city skyline from the top of a temple, which was another amazing experience and top class, recommend it. I also visited the International Bazaar twice. It was so good, I had to do it twice. I wandered the city thinking a few things, and this is what I wanted to share more about my short experience in Xinjiang, a beautiful city with a diverse culture, a city I now know of 6 million people, 4.5 million people permanently residents in Urumqi, where I am, and another 1.5 million people of transient population that moves with the seasonal work. Xinjiang is a massive agricultural region and it supplies so much to the rest of China and beyond. Addition to that, there are many minerals, oils, gas and various industries that support the people of this region. And I was surprised to see such a rich culture, and the guide, Abdul, the guide that supported me for a day, highlighted the, as he called it, the many faces of Xinjiang, because there has been so many cultures connecting and sharing this land over many years. You can actually see the European influences, Chinese, South Asian, West Asian and further and beyond, all reflected in the people. In fact, my guide, who is Uyghur, helped me understand a lot about the cultures and what goes into making this part of China so special. I didn't know, for instance, that people here spoke many languages, and Turkish, or a derivative of the Turkish language, was spoken so widely here. The way Abdul, my guide, described it, he said it was like a Spanish person from Spain going to Mexico and managing to understand about 80% of the language straight away because of the similarities in the language. I learned so much in the time I spent here, and I seen a city that has food, music and kindness at its very core. I'm going to share more with you, but I will be back in a minute. Meanwhile, enjoy some video from my evening visit to the International Bazaar. I've got to get some stuff ready. So get ready for the airport, enjoy this video, see you in a bit. Hi, welcome back. I was away for a wee bit longer than I planned there because I am now back in Beijing. The flight back was a bit of a nightmare, but I'll come back to that in a second. So some of my thoughts and reflections about Xinjiang and my experience in Urumqi. So where do you even start with an open discussion about Xinjiang, especially when you think about the Western media angle? And now, before I went to Urumqi, I actually reviewed a lot of the reporting from the Western media before I came, and a lot of it, in my opinion, was sensationalism. I even watched a report from a British media company where they went to an old disused building and reported from there with the usual accusations. And I can tell you this, that is very easy to do now that I know so much more about video editing, storytelling, and how you can cut things to your advantage if you have that malicious intent. And also that mysterious reporter voice that speaks in a way that lets you, the viewer, feel that something sinister is happening, you know, that kind of thing. So I understand that more. As you can see, easy done. I've also come to the conclusion that more than half of the media news, if not more, that reporting I see now is nothing more than an advert, a movie script told in a way to influence you as to go along with something or other, something that we probably do not benefit from, but it's all designed to get you on board with stuff. To discuss Xinjiang, for me, the starting point is to understand where Xinjiang is on the map and what its neighbours are like, as well as to know some of the history there. For instance, this area was pivotal to the historical Silk Road. The Silk Road was south, actually, of where I was. I was in the Urumqi, which is in the north, north of the Xinjiang Autonomous Region, the Uyghur Autonomous Region. I was in the north. The Silk Road route actually was in the south. It revolved around the Tarim Basin and cities like Kashgar, which I hope to get to one day. These cities were major trade hubs along the Silk Road, connecting China, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. So you can see and you can imagine some of the history that's there, and also the, dare I say it, the pirate-like atmosphere that was there at that time. Now, the history of Xinjiang and its relationship with China is complex, no doubt about it. Scholars and political groups claim that Xinjiang has been part of China for thousands of years, while others can argue that it has only been fully integrated into China relatively recently, documented actually from the Chinese Qing dynasty in the 18th century, so you can read into that what you want. Xinjiang is also neighboured by some of the most unstable countries in the world, countries like Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, as well as other countries such as Mongolia, India and Russia, who are a little bit more stable to a certain extent. So how your average Joe living in a cosy apartment in London or New York with the prejudices that they have can even begin to understand this area and have a validated view is actually beyond me. But they do. We see it all the time, and I experience it in the comments below. Feel free to comment. So it's also crucial to consider the external actors in the region and the persistent rumours of their ability and their intention to destabilise and influence negativity in that area. While it's challenging to provide concrete proof, the countries often implicated in this narrative have a history of destabilising and exploiting regions and countries for their own gain. This can range from theft of resources to pushing for government overthrow, the old regime change game, remember that, or even the misuse of the wealth of the countries that they wreck. These destabilising forces also misappropriate their own taxpayers' money for the benefit of their economy, their individual wealth too, or that of the elite and the military contractors. It's not difficult to see the potential implications of such actions or who would do such a thing. Now, for me, the other area to look at would be the reporting, the media coverage. It is hysterical, and much of which has been actually disproven, or what has been claimed has been kind of laughable in a way, whimsical in some of the cases, based on nonsensical evidence presented as fact. some of it's dubious, but many people don't actually look beyond the headlines. They see the sensational headlines and then only make it to maybe the first paragraph, if that, and then that lack of knowledge adds to the hysteria because they take it to social media and it all unfolds onto social media, and the next thing you know, you have a movement where people are claiming and believing in stories that they think are factual. It's a movement of the blind leading the blind, to be fair. And this whipping up a storm of angry people is as old as humankind itself. History is full of it, and it ends up usually in the screaming for a ban of this or ban of that, and it's always something that suits the agenda of the people that started that rumour or that story, that narrative or that reporting. It's interesting that some of social media sites are now under further scrutiny because they will not play the game with the authorities. And then you have to ask yourself who benefits. Well, again, you don't need to stretch your imagination too much to know who benefits. I think it was Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett who are famous for saying who benefits or what are the incentives. So ask yourself who benefits from destabilising this region and what are the incentives. It's the questions you just got to ask yourself, I believe. I also find context important, and a part of the context in this area is the terrorist attacks in the 1990s, the late 1990s, that continued up until a peak in 2014 when some of the controls that were put in place were actually implemented. In fact, there was one of the attacks in 2014 that I actually saw a clip of the video, and it was horrendous, it was horrific. The attack happened in Kunming. 8 terrorists dressed in black with long swords attacked Kunming train station, and using swords and knives they killed 33 people and injured more than 130 people. Western media do not report this context, and in fact we see similar attacks happening in the West, and each and every time we see them it is horrendous, but these facts that happen here are all there if you want to do further research. So for me it is understandable that there are now much tighter controls, increased surveillance and measures taken to drive prosperity and support the safety and well-being of the general population. People now have hope instead of fear. Now that you know this, ask yourself what would happen in the West if these attacks had actually occurred in some train stations or whatever, airports or whatever in the West. If, in fact, you can answer that now by referring to some of the other conflicts that are happening in other parts of the world. As I said, context is valuable when you're being informed by the news and the media. So where's the region at now? The region is much more stable, and certainly from my experience in Urumqi, I can see with my own eyes, and as I have shared with you, a lot of investment and support that is being sent to that area. It is visible, it's tangible. Yes, there is a lot of security in the area with more police presence. Actually, for the first time in my life, I've seen police officers with guns in Urumqi. There's security scanners, and a couple of the tourist areas that I was at, there was some military presence. All that, for me, is there to keep people safe and allow people to shop, eat out, travel, and dance in the park, like I've shared with you, to do all that in safety. I think, honestly, that approach is far better than war, if you ask me. So all that investment in now a stable, prosperous region, yes, it's not perfect, but it's obviously now much more stable. So it's worth noting how that has improved the standards of living in that region. From 2000 to 2021, Xinjiang's GDP grew at an average annual rate of 11.3%, where the average in China was just above 9%, so it's growing faster. And 2021, Xinjiang registered a GDP of approximately $255 billion. And the industrial investment in Xinjiang has increased significantly, and it's reached around, I think the high point was around $72 billion in 2017 alone, and so that's investment in that region. Disposable income in Xinjiang has also increased with an average annual growth rate of 9.6% from 2014 to 2018, and is still growing faster than many of the other areas in China. And the government has implemented various policies to support economic development in Xinjiang, including tax incentives, investment in infrastructure, and the establishment of special
economic zones. So again, if you get beyond the sensational headlines, you can get the context which paints a much more vivid picture, and you can give yourself a greater understanding of this beautiful and unique region in China. Now, I'm no authority on all of this. I've just came here, had a look around and found out for myself some more information because I'm just curious. I wanted to have a look. Now, getting back to my return flight, the irony is that my flight was actually delayed for 10 hours, in part because of some bad weather, I think coming from the South China, but also come across from Afghanistan. And also, that was the day that Israel attacked Iran, and I think flights were cleared from some of the airspace, which had a knock-on effect. And it is an awful situation that's taking place in that part of the world. So much going on there, and a lot of information that does not seem to be fully accurate. If you've read George Orwell's book 1984, then you can see what he meant when he wrote the words newspeak and doublethink. George Orwell actually used to work for the BBC, which I always find quite comical. So my conclusion, interestingly enough, this feels more like a video essay than anything I've done before. But contrast and compare the approach from the West that tends to solve a lot of the conflicts in the world with more conflict. Compare that with what is happening in Xinjiang, where I can see investment, support, education, celebration, and the recognition of diverse cultures. I can see people enjoying that, and they're looking passionately to the future with positive energy, and I've heard people tell me that. Knowing also that they are safe, their children and their children's children will also be safe. I think that's a lot better than, like I said, constant war. I've also learned that everything I have been taught at school, history, modern studies, economics, all of that and more from way back then, right up to where I am now, and even beyond where I am now, what I'm learning, might not always be accurate, and I should question things a whole lot more. Now, does that make me cynical? Yes, I think it does. But I think even better still, it makes me more curious, open-minded, and I'm also quite excited about the world because I think it is a much better place than what people would, or the authorities would let us believe. And I also know that my neighbours, whom we are being told to hate, and who apparently hate us, are not the enemy. They are positioned as such because they are a handy distraction that enables things to happen in our name using our money. That would definitely be a distraction for things that we knew would be awful if we actually understood the truth. I don't have the answers, and I know Xinjiang, in my experience there, is not fully perfect, but I do know what I believe. I believe a safe and stable world with countries working together would be a huge benefit to mankind. But that takes strong and noble leadership, and that is where we have the enormous gaps. Because right now, our Western leadership is not the quality that it needs to be, and it feels like they don't represent the will of the people. It is like they represent something else. Do you honestly believe they represent you? I'm not sure. Anyway, this is Ian here in Beijing, wishing you all the best, telling you to take care of yourself, take care of your family and your community, and as always, peace out. Catch you later in the next video.